Hello, today is Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. I'm Joe Schmidt from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. On today's podcast, I'm joined by Ben Fox, one of TC2's managing directors, and David Lee, TC2's technology director, and we are going to talk about Cisco. If you run a network or you have any type of networking need, you almost certainly are a customer of Cisco. That is definitely the case with most of our clients. And as a customer of Cisco, you probably also recently received a heads up from your Cisco account team telling you that Cisco is preparing to increase its global list pricing by approximately 10% from the end of last month. That stings. So let's talk about what, if anything, you can do about it. Hey, Ben and David, thanks for joining me to talk about this, and welcome back to Staying Connected.
Well, hello, Joe. Nice to talk to you again.
Hi, Joe. Glad to be back.
Right. There's always a reason or a culprit for cost increases. So, Ben, what is Cisco blaming for these increases in its list pricing?
So, yes, Cisco is blaming the increasing costs of various components, as well as increases in its manufacturing and shipping costs. Now, of course, they are common complaints across all industries right now, never mind just IT. But I think in reality, there are absolutely inflationary pressures out there on Cisco's underlying costs. And so that almost inevitably leads to price increases at some point. I think the degree to which Cisco is only passing on those costs versus using current market conditions to hike its prices is very difficult to say. And it's also true that Cisco's always made selective changes to its list pricing on an ongoing basis, both up and down. But it is a little unusual to have this type of across-the-board increase. Although for what it's worth, the cited 10% is really an average, Joe. Cisco has actually pointed out that some products will be subject to less or more increases, and has also stated that their SaaS product pricing for things such as WebEx, SaaS product pricing is not being increased.
So, Ben, is there much that customers can do to protect themselves from these types of increases?
Well, the reality, Joe, is that most customers' pricing arrangements with Cisco are discount-based, which means that any increases to Cisco's list pricing just gets reflected in that customer's next purchase from Cisco. You can seek longer quote lock periods, for instance, longer than the standard 30 days, but that really only helps lock in the older, the lower pricing very temporarily. So I will say that there is more room to maneuver with software prices under enterprise agreements, where often the pricing for true-ups and growth is locked down, so not subject to these kind of list price increase. But to be honest, the market for network hardware, at least, is largely a list price and discount play, not just with Cisco, but with other network OEMs as well. So ultimately, I think the best way to protect and to minimize the effect of various OEM list price increases is really just to have as much competition in your environment as possible. So you have some options and don't always need to rely on Cisco or don't always need to rely on some other OEM for a particular product set.
Yeah, that makes sense, Ben. So, David, Cisco's kit used to be must-have technology. Is that still the case? And are there alternatives to Cisco for larger enterprises? And if so, what are they using and what has the experience been when those customers introduce competition?
Well, Joe, many of our clients have been doing pilots, trial installations, and in some cases have already changed their standards to different vendors than Cisco. There's been a significant change in the past 3 to 4 years with Cisco's competition as they continue to target the technology towers in which enterprises have historically standardized on Cisco products and services. For example, our clients have selected HPE Aruba for their enterprise standard for wireless access points and controllers, as well as Palo Alto Networks and Fortinet for their firewall solutions. Notably, in the fairly new area of SD-WAN solutions where Cisco dominated the WAN edge marketplace, many enterprises have selected Versa, VeloCloud, owned now by VMware, and Silver Peak, owned now by HPE, replacing these Cisco routers. In addition, Cisco's LAN access switch products also have come under competition from HPE and Juniper Solutions, and in some scenarios, Extreme Networks. We do see that enterprises are mostly sticking with Cisco for their data center infrastructure, but we also see Arista get decent traction in that space as well.
Cisco seems to be very good at embedding itself in customer networks. They make sure that their customers are trained in Cisco products, and they work really hard on executive contacts. And that familiarity, it seems, to make some customers nervous about trying other manufacturers' products. enterprises probably need to be thinking differently. So what other strategies can enterprises use?
I agree, Joe. Historically, Cisco has been entrenched in the enterprise. However, enterprises can get comfortable with new products and architectures by performing proof of concepts, lab testing, and pilots in production environments. In addition, enterprises will find that these alternative manufacturers perform enhanced pre-sale support, including engineering, proof of concepts, and pilots at no additional charge to assist them in getting comfortable. Whereas Cisco usually does require the customer to purchase Cisco consulting services or business critical services to evaluate their new products and technologies and services. Having said that, though, Cisco may offer credits to offset these engineering consulting services, but one has to purchase a lot of Cisco equipment to earn these credits to have any meaningful benefit. Enterprise should also evaluate the cost of support and maintenance after the initial purchase. For example, Cisco charges for selected technical support services called HTOM or HTech support that will add significant cost in your Cisco total cost of ownership calculations. But the alternative vendors don't charge for this for large enterprise deals. And lastly, enterprise should also review the history of software patching frequency and how Cisco tools deploy the patch and compare that with these alternative vendors' patching frequency and methods. The extra personnel costs and operational risk of too frequent and inefficient patching is certainly a key aspect to evaluate.
Thanks for that, David. Hey, Ben, David mentioned maintenance. So what about maintenance? That always seems to be a significant spend area for clients.
Yeah, agreed. Maintenance is definitely a significant budget line item, but it's also an area where I think customers can protect their pricing a bit more. So for SmartNet, which of course is Cisco's hardware maintenance product, a lot of customers do periodic renewals across their entire Cisco estate, for example, once every 3 years. And then the list pricing is locked in at the time of that renewal for the term of the SmartNet contract. So in that case, you're only subject to list price increases for new equipment that gets added to the scope of the SmartNet contract over time. And of course, in the spirit of seeking out those competitive alternatives that we were talking about, there are alternatives to Cisco SmartNet, such as branded maintenance that some providers offer. So for instance, AT&T, NTT, Verizon, they all have branded maintenance offerings. And then also alternative maintenance solutions from providers such as Park Place that provide their own spares and they're quite independent from Cisco. There are pros and cons, of course, to those services compared to vanilla Cisco SmartNet, and you need to examine them because that can make a difference. And then the other thought I would share with you, Joe, really is that I think the key to competitive pricing and services from Cisco is really to get your arms around your entire Cisco relationship and think about it and address it as holistically as possible. So, we've seen, as everybody has, that enterprises' relationships with Cisco have become considerably more complex over the last few years, to include not just spend on one-time purchase of hardware and software products and the associated maintenance, but increasingly also a portfolio of software subscriptions, SaaS products, associated support contracted in various enterprise agreements, and then custom support, as David mentioned, like Cisco's HTech services and its so-called business critical services, and even project services and managed services. So we find that really a customer's best protection to offsetting unilateral list price increases where you really don't have much control is to have a comprehensive strategy for dealing with Cisco across that entire relationship. And so making sure that in aggregate, at least, you're receiving best value from your Cisco products and services.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you too, David. This has been a great discussion. If you would like to learn more about strategies for managing your relationship and commercial arrangements with Cisco, or if you'd like to discuss other ICT needs with Ben, David, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues, please give us a call or shoot us an email. You can also stay up to date by subscribing to these Staying Connected podcasts, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.